inside here or outside.
Yeah,
No.
step over there, it's like a lot of skew.
I talked to a client this morning early, for morning person, they were complaining they had so little precipitation. They got whacked with a foot of snow last night. I said, how do you like it now? I got 2 kids in my house that are cheering for snow.
All right, let's get moving. We're already a little bit late. We're already a little bit late, so let's go. First of all, thank you all for being here and for our visitors for being here. This is the 13th retreat that the council has held, and Michael well, believe it or not. And I see that update is my thing. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to update, but I want to talk about what is coming. You'll see in the journal, I trust, that there are a couple of things that I'm looking forward to this year. Actually, 3, and I wrote about them all. One's what the Planning Commission's work on revising the zoning code. There are 3 items in that stand to be controversial, and it's been thus far the Planning Commission's intent to carry those items forward to for feedback from the community during the public hearing process. One being the historical part of the historical designation. I probably won't stand if I carry, but
That's all right.
just the same.
You're in the ballpark.
And that's, I think, a tremendously important part of this this process, that we have in place a process for designating historical locations, buildings within the village in order to protect them. And this is all part and parcel of our National Historic Landmark designation. The second item is going to be recreational vehicle, the potential for regulating recreational vehicles within the village. That's always been a controversial thing, and it generates a lot of spirited discussion, but it seems inappropriate for us to be way out of step with neighboring jurisdictions, so that's the second item. And the third item, I think is probably the most interesting, is urban agriculture. There's actually a little blurb in the paper today about the Gorman Farm over in Edendale hosting a workshop on raising chickens in your backyard in suburban and urban locations. It's become quite, especially with the cost of groceries and things, it's becoming quite popular. I've got some friends who live in the north side in the city of Cincinnati that raise chickens, and a number of my colleagues from work raise chickens. Now, granted, some of them out in the boondocks in Indiana, but some of them don't. So that's
friend of mine, look up.
Got
about 13 of them.
Yeah, so that's coming. The second item I wrote about is the charter committee. There will be a charter committee appointed probably by the beginning of summer. The way that the charter permits itself to be amended through this process is for a charter committee to be appointed to be in place for no longer than 6 months. The charter committee will then make a recommendation to council. Council then has the opportunity to take any or all or none of those proposals and bring those to the electorate. I purposely chosen not to begin this process to be ready for the general election, because the general election is going to be noisy enough. And I'd like people to be able to concentrate on issues relating to Greenhills. So my target is for that to come to the electorate in the primary election in 2013. And the third item, in 2013, we will recognize the 75th anniversary of the village. So this is something that I want council to be thinking of, and the celebration I'd like to see a citizens committee, perhaps with leadership of a council committee, or just an ad hoc group of council members and community members to plan and lead and do what they can to facilitate the wishes of the community for the 75th anniversary. I think it's important that we recognize it. I'd certainly like to be able to celebrate that with the National Historic Landmark designation. So that's that story. There's a lot of business for the upcoming year. And I'm 2 minutes, well, I'm not, 3 minutes short. So, if anybody's got any questions about that, any of this stuff, I'd be happy to entertain.
I don't want to work all the details, but how big do you see the charter maybe now?
7 people. I think that's what the charter calls for. They have a share. They will operate independently. Input from council, it's something that we've looked at over the years, but there's never been a compelling, or at least in the mayor's, in his opinion, it's never a compelling reason to do that. But it's time, and it's something that I've thought's been needed for a long time. It's been since 1988 that the charter's been in place. So, after 25 years, it's time. We've had one charter amendment passed in the past election. That was wholly appropriate. So that's that story. So it'll probably be 17.
The charter committee, is it going to be a representative from council in there as well? Should be, or not?
There could be.
Okay.
There could be. And I guess it's if there's anybody that's got strong passion, please apply for the position.
Okay.
If you've read the paper in the last week or so, and you see what's going on in Sycamore Township, what's going on with all the townships with the local government fund, with inheritance tax, with the article in the paper on Hamilton County police officers at $87,000 a police officer. Every time I read one of those articles, I say, thank God I live in Greenhills. Thank God that we have a charter versus statutory rule, because it just gives us some more flexibility. So, it's been an interesting couple of weeks in the newspaper for local governments.
Yeah, and this business with Sycamore Township and the firefighters, I don't think that's going to go away, and that's going to repeat itself in a number of jurisdictions. Looking at the just scope and numbers that those governments kind of dealing with. The governor is forcing us, and he's stated it out loud, that he'd really like to see the number of governments in the state of Ohio diminish considerably. And if we look at the models of Louisville, Jefferson County, Indianapolis, Marion County, and the city of Columbus, a lot of the cities that are perceived as strong and vibrant and modern and growing all tend to have more consolidated governments. That doesn't necessarily mean all the local governments go away, probably some opportunities at those models, but it's going to take leadership on a countywide, regional level to deal with. You know, we're not going to be able. The Hamilton County's not going to be able to do what Columbus did. They basically annexed almost everything that they could within the confines of Franklin County. The way that those laws are written now, they've been kind of pushed to make it much more difficult for the government to come in and annex and, you know, subsume other jurisdictions. So it's going to have to be a voluntary thing. Sort of like Indianapolis, Marion County went through. So we will see. We will see. And I think it's time to pass things over to the manager.
Thank you.
Can I, before you get started,
Sure.
when I was working on it with you folks, putting this agenda together, I don't want to appreciate Fred's restraint and running over a bunch of time, but if we're rolling on something, let's not be a slave to the clock.
And who's keeping the official notes of the day?
Okay.
Do you, well, maybe try to do it all, I might be talking a lot. I can try to take some.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you take some notes, and then if
Yeah.
there's blanks, I'll try and fill them in.
Okay, will do. Ready for me
Go.
to get started? Okay, yeah, somebody have to time me. Okay, well, it's been a good year. It's been a year of a lot of changes. I think in just about every field of operations, we've had some changes. Finance, obviously, Kim here, he's here now. That has gone well. In administration, we've had some changes in both people and assignments. The building and code, obviously, has had a major change. Taxes are now done differently. Even the service department, I've done the staffing. There are some people who are seasonal now. You'll see them only at certain times of the year. The golf course worker, he'll only be in, you know, specific times. So those have all changed. And obviously the pool change, we've gone through that this year as well. So hopefully we'll have good results from that this particular summer. But I think first and foremost has been and will always be our budget, and keeping a close tab on that. I think we've done remarkably well this past year, and I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish, but there's still a whole lot more to be done in that regard. But we have definitely streamlined and been able to save for some of the measures I was just mentioning in each of the departments. And outsource, you know, again, where it seems to have made sense to do so. So Kim is terrific. You know, and I feel like we're on top of it, and we're going to continue to work through our money issues and keep our budget in good shape. Of course, like the mayor said, there's changes ahead, and we need to prepare for those. So some of the things that we're going to be suggesting through the appropriation is certainly to keep us in good shape for the next 5 to 10 years because of the volatility of the money and the sources of money and our debt tied into that whole picture. So that'll be one big focus for this year. Development, I think, again, everything we've done, I think, has laid a good foundation for all the things we can now do this year, and I definitely see our development moving forward in a lot of regards. This building, for one, which is one when we met last year, I'm not sure to what extent we anticipate the changes here, but the RFP is now being circulated. The deadline's February 29th. So we can look forward to some positive changes here at Roy's. And then our development, the mayor's already mentioned the zoning, which is huge for us to complete that, because once that's in place, we can feel real confident to go ahead with really promoting development, because we have the comfort of having our zoning code in place. The Winton Road corridor is certainly going to be an emphasis this year. It cannot help but be because of the shopping center and the state of the shopping center and the need to move quickly on that. And then again, as I've told many of you, I feel strongly that that particular project is going to impact our success in the housing market, but we are definitely moving forward with an overall plan for disposing of our properties in accordance with your original goal of promoting home ownership. So that will be a huge task this year that I'll certainly be spending a lot of my time on. And I also want to mention code enforcement, because I think any kind of rehab or new construction goes hand in hand with some code enforcement for our existing housing stock and commercial properties. The NIC has completed an initial, they did this actually last year, an initial survey of all of the issues, and letters have actually gone out based on the items that we're able to currently monitor. But the International Property Maintenance Code, which I know will be in committee soon, so we can move that forward to passage, will be a big piece for us to accomplish this year and have some sound enforcement underway.
Real quick question.
Yes.
I mean, we got a zoning committee intact, pretty consistent in what's going on as far as making these changes, and okay. And then also, when you were talking about development and everything, the first thing I'm thinking about is that I know we were holding back on redeveloping the parking lot up there in front of the shopping center. It's a mess. And service and streets, I know that there's money that's there in service and streets that you can't touch unless you do something in service and streets. Is there any way that we can actually think about doing something in the front parking lot?
Okay. That gets on my list.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, we're on the same wavelength there. And let me just jump to that right now, because we do have some really strong capital needs right now. And parking lots is on the list. And we do have some money that's allocated strictly for streets and catch basins, things like that do have to be used for those purposes. And that's another thing that we're watching and trying to keep money available there so we can leverage other dollars, because now you need anywhere from like 25 to 41% if you're going to get some grant money to take your dollar a little bit further. So yes, our parking lots as well as the streets, we'll have some infrastructure projects underway this year. Hopefully the first phase of the Winton Road, which would be from Sharon to Ingram. We want to be able to take advantage when the waterworks, should they ever be complete, which someday they will be, for about $12,000 we'll be able to resurface Andover and Cromwell. So that's going to be two others that we're able to do this year. But yes, the parking lots, they're long overdue. So we will address those this year as well. Maybe not to the extent that you'd like. If we're having redevelopment, we don't want to spend a whole lot, but certainly fixing them so we're not, so they're not in the condition they're in now.
Right.
This building is another issue for us. Again, while we're having a changeover, it's going to be an opportunity to spend some capital dollars, must spend capital dollars. I think it was in 2009 or maybe early 2010, your engineer did a study, the person who was the engineer at the time, to do some drainage piping through here, and I kind of starting up in the corner and running along the front. You did some temporary measures apparently up here with the curbing, but there is a more extensive plan, and you really might want to look at it, because that corner of this building needs some serious work.
Yeah,
or if we don't do the drainage, I'm afraid we're gonna maybe lose that end of the building eventually. It's really literally going down with us. So I think we don't want to let that get any worse. We need to try to address that. And our service building is another one that we need to, structurally it appears to be okay. We put some new roofing on it this year, but it needs to be painted, and that'll be no small task because that's a huge, huge building. So those three items I see that we need to consider doing rather soon.
Do we have money allocated in CapEx right now for those or not?
No, not really.
Okay.
But we've not completed the final figures for the appropriation, and we will try to do it.
So then that's where you want to try to get those grants if we have 25 and 41%. Try to get grants to go ahead and do some of those items.
Yeah, and probably most realistic would be the parking lot, because they're publicly owned. Not Service Garage, probably no potential there for a grant. Malloy's probably not, although if we can find a way to tie it into the major drainage that goes out to our golf course lake, then possibly. I have inquired with the stormwater district to see if there is some funding, because that is a huge drainage, and when you're tapping those big, when you're talking about those kind of major drainage areas, there might be the potential for him to fund some of it, so.
Yeah, because that's mainly
Certainly not
retention
that.
area, the golf course, and that's
Right.
what we're looking for.
Absolutely, and it's, you know, it's draining, and it drains to the West Fork, so, that's a major watershed, and we might be able to get some grant money there, can't be sure.
Do we know what the problem, do we have a big tree limb, or do we know what?
No, it is draining, it just could drain quicker. So we're gonna, as soon as it gets down a little bit lower, we're gonna probably televise it, because that's probably our cheapest, you know, makes the most sense to do that first, so we don't go in and do something we didn't really need to do. But it is draining, and we are, we have a pump out there that we utilize sometime to help drain a little bit quicker. But again, it is doing what it was intended to do. I know we've gotten calls and, concerns about that, but it was constructed to do that, so.
Yeah, we just had,
So
that says
far,
not moisture.
Yes, yeah, see ducks on it too, looks
Yeah.
lakefront property for a while here. Okay, let's see, back on track. Our pocket parks are another thing that I hope we would be able to focus on this year with some of our recreation money. I already mentioned the infrastructure improvements, talked about the capital needs. The one item that has not moved forward this year as I had hoped it would, and that is our website. I know I've had a lot of conversations with Mr. Halter about this. We've put staff time into it. It's been designed, at least enough to get it up and going. But the bottom line is staff time to actually put documents on it, and we have a lot of it done. My hope is to just go ahead and put it out there. Some of the pages are going to say under construction, and then as we can, we'll build it, but at least get it out there.
I can pass it around if you want to give them a
Sure, that'd be great.
And this was a first pass.
Yes, absolutely first pass, so don't, you know, even the stories on there are just samples, so. But, anyway, it is in the works. I
Where
was
will it
thinking
be
about
hosted?
bigger
Will
events.
Waycross continue to host it, or?
No, they will not be hosting it there,
Okay.
but it will still link to them, for all of our, nothing will change in terms of our showing videos and all that, that all stays the
There's
same.
an advantage for it not being to
Right. I think there is too,
Yeah.
yeah, because when their server goes down, of course, well, right,
The,
it's,
The other thing too, I don't know if you want to plan into the possibility of being the fifth place for public notification.
oh, yeah, good. Because frequently communities are using that now for an official post, and we do put materials up there, but it's not an official posting place at this point in time. But you could, I believe by ordinance, amend your list of posting places if you wanted to add the website to that.
Right now, am I correct, we have 3 public places, or do we have?
I believe we have 4, don't we? Yeah, it's the library, the post office, right pad, and our office. Got that
Okay.
right, Terry? Okay.
And my-
There's no
Yeah.
outside of the room.
Just a note, because obviously I'm coming on later than the website was already started. I like it, I think there's some good things about it, but I do think we want to even up the bar even more. If we really, I think that we want a consistent branding image that goes across packets we hand out to potential businesses and communication to new residents for that matter. But that'll come, and I see, and it's definitely, I think, stepped up a lot from where it was kind of dry, sterile, just informational, and even weak at times on that. But so what I'm going to do is kick it into. I'm sorry, I'm taking
No,
everything.
go for it.
I'm going to kick it into one of the other sites that I think it's Worthington, Columbus, shows where I think we need to go. And it's definitely better than it was, so I have high hopes.
And I appreciate all the help.
And not to take away from what Ron's done at all, so I think it's,
Well, that's
I'm
fine.
very proactive on her part. Kim, on the top, there's a tab.
You don't have to have You know what, I think that did conclude the items that I want to review right now. Anybody have questions?
When you were talking about the website, staff time to document, that's gonna be hard. I guess you're busy enough to staff as well.
Yeah, well, you know, and I think the building of it is the initial piece. Once we have everything up there, because I guess what we're finding is, you know, there's neat sections for, you know, this application, these rules, those rules. Well, those aren't really in writing, and I'm not saying everything, there's a lot of writing. You know, we're creating a lot of things right now.
Right.
And it's just accomplishing that quick enough to get it out on the website. And that's why there just might be some things we just deal with it as they come forward and they have to be dealt with. And then once we're done with that, it's ready for the website.
Okay.
So anything that exists, we can certainly, and it probably already is up there, it's just, we'd like a whole lot more, but I think maybe we just need to go with it and just keep building it.
Mm-hmm. One thing I put down here too, did you hire another full-time person? Because I think Mike Kester is the only full-time person.
Oh, but I've made one of our part-time,
A full-time?
a full-time,
Okay, gotcha. Been helping out a lot?
yes, a lot.
Okay.
We desperately need another full-time person.
Yeah.
On the cyber piece, just a couple of questions. And I can ask this question now, because if it's micromanaging, we haven't talked about the role of counsel versus the role of manager yet, so I can ask forgiveness later on and it'll be all good. But how are you gonna, what I see, and this is from a non-webmaster type purview, what I see with websites is that they're really cool, they get launched, everybody's excited about them, and then keeping them fresh and keeping them up to date is like, how do
It has
we
to
get
be
content?
someone's responsibility,
Yeah.
and someone has to be focused on that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So is there gonna be one person that's the owner of it that
Mm-hmm.
did
Yes,
ever do
there
that?
has to be, absolutely. And you know, again, the other things, there will be certain areas that we do have to update. But my goal is to have the other ones, at least for this season, you know, be such that here it is, or even for the year, and then, you know, there's news sections, which will be updated, but there should be a lot of information that remains the same unless there's big changes. So while it seems like everything's gotta change, I don't think it will. We have a lot of basic information that maybe we have to change if ever.
One of the barriers has been the method that it's done now through Waycross, and when
Right,
we get
it's-
to it, it's once removed. It should be a lot more direct when it's in your control.
Mhm.
She has an administrative password and that kind of thing, so I think it's heading in the right direction, and you're right, it has to be current and fresh, but it shouldn't be too hard.
I agree. I think once, you know, we've got the basics up there, the front page, the schedules, the ordinances, those items will get changed, but yeah, there'll be specific people who are doing that on a regular basis anyway.
And my question comes from a risk perspective. Is this gonna be transactional at all? You know, if the FBI got hacked yesterday by the anonymous group, and we've had emails from anonymous users, I'm like hyper concerned about that. And
Well, actually, there is a contact us. There'll be a general email, but
I'm-
there's no exchange.
Okay.
No dialogue.
Okay.
or anything going on.
Yeah. And we should talk to Cordy about cyber liability, and if we've got any, and whatever.
On streets,
Mhm.
now we talked about this week, there is some cold patch available, but do we have any plans in place to try and take care of some of these potholes before we're bound to get some weather?
Oh, no, and we will. I had mentioned that my husband was out again Friday, but I did send him a message that next week we have to do some potholes.
Oh, okay.
I wonder,
Got contacted my son came by about 2 months after we talked, and he works for Jurgensen.
Mm-hmm.
And he put me in touch with a guy at Jurgensen, and they said their hot patch plants are all down for the season.
Right, yeah. They do have access to other, it's expensive, but some of the big guys like that do have access to other.
But they've got cold patch, and I think it's down at the Marion Way facility, but there is cold patch available, and they have a pretty good quality cold patch, which I think can even be put down in wet
and that's
Maybe not
typically,
standing water in it maybe, but if it doesn't have to be totally dry, I don't think, to be effective.
we use a contractor when we're gonna do that kind of patch. So, but it will get done, as we're prepared to do that.
Our guys don't have time to do it.
No, they do, it's just, it's a different technique, and I'm sorry, I can't discuss the fine differences of it, but I know the hot patch is easier from just do bag by bag. I think it's more like filling the truck and how they go about that.
Yeah, you buy it by the ton, you can
Cold
buy cold
patch,
patch
right.
by the ton too. And it's, I think the cold patch is actually a lot cheaper, I think the cold patch is like $110 a ton. So the material is not that expensive, it's, the labor to put it down. And they've done cold patch before, I know,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think Mike knows how to put cold patch down.
Should we move on?
Okay.
Should win the money.
Here, I'll hand out the financial information that I printed up for everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Would you guys like a packet?
If you have an extra one, that's great.
You want one, Kathy?
Kim and Yvonne and I met, since I'm handling or chairing the finance committee, just so I could get a little background, a little bit more in depth in what I had just as a member of council. And, I asked Kim to provide a couple of documents just for us to look at. There are kind of some numbers that are basic numbers that we all ought to have a little bit of a working knowledge about. So if someone asks you, how much money does the village spend a year, you got a little bit of idea, or kind of how our finances work, that we have a general fund, and then we have specific funds for designated uses, like we have a recreation fund, and it generates dollars each day, or each year from the levy, or we have a swimming pool fund, and was set up to make the enhancements to the swimming pool several years ago. So the top page, and Kim, jump in and fill in any details,
Sure.
is,
The top page is the summary of 2011.
yeah,
It shows our starting fund balances in the first column, broken down by fund. And then the sixth column down shows the ending fund balance. So it shows where we started the year in each fund, and it shows where we ended the year in each fund. And then the revenues are in the middle and the expenditures are in the middle. So you can see where we were at, just a quick summarization for 2011.
and one of the things that, I'd like to see us work towards is, some kind of goals for ending fund balances at the end of the year. Just like, we don't wanna live, I'm gonna take this to your personal finance level, we don't wanna live paycheck to paycheck. Because just like your house, and the washing machine, breaks, you better have some money to pay for the washing machine. I think one of the things the finance committee will work on this year is what are appropriate, ending fund balances. So this document will be helpful in looking at it and looking at it as some historical information so that we can, get some, perspectives. Because quite frankly, you look at the townships and where they're having massive amounts of pain is because they didn't have sufficient end fund balances to handle these unbelievable contingencies. I believe it's Anderson Township is losing half of their revenue, because of the inheritance tax that we will lose this year and the 50% reduction in just two things. Those are, that doesn't take into account reductions in grant money that's available, reduction in other tax revenue that comes our way. Whether we like it or not as taxpayers, it does take a certain amount of money to run the village. And so, to the extent that we can set some goals and move towards those goals on annual fund balances, I think could really help our financial stability. Also, the top one is the fund summary at the end of 2011.
And the second sheet there is, these are really just projections. This is just a snapshot of what things may look like in 2012, what we're expecting them at this point with the information we have right now. This is what we're expecting things to look like. The first column is your beginning balances, and then if you see, I just separated out income tax on the second row there. We anticipate 1,100,000 this year. Last year, our actual receipts were 932,163. So I just separated that out because I know that's a question that people commonly ask me. And then, we have beginning balances in the first column. We have our anticipated receipts in the next column. The next column is the prior year actual receipts. Just put that in there for comparison so you can easily look at it and see where we were last year. And then the next column is the beginning balances added to our anticipated receipts to give us an idea of how much we might have available in each fund. The next column is our proposed appropriations, and they're proposed because we haven't passed them yet. And but that's what, it's close. That's what we're thinking right now. We may need to look at things a little closer before we pass them. But
definitely things that we still need to put in there, unfortunately.
Yeah. So that's just an idea, right? Like I said, right now with the information that I have right now, those are proposed appropriations. And then the next column is the prior year actuals. Again, just there for comparison, so you can see exactly what we spent last year in each fund very easily. And then the last column is the projected 12/31 balance.
Okay.
You guys can spend some time digesting those numbers.
So right now, you're thinking anticipated receipts probably around maybe at 12% less. I mean, not 12%, maybe 8% less than what it was last year.
On which fund or fund overall?
It's a general.
In a general?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's showing about 135,000.
Yeah.
Yvonne and I are both, we think the same way. We anticipate our receipts conservatively,
Right.
and we anticipate our appropriations on the high end so that we're always working on the conservative side. And we feel like that's the safest way to operate, and so that's how we do it.
I mean, it's nice that the projected balance you're showing is 150,000 more than what it was this year. That's good. As far as what you plan on having.
Yeah, well, and if you look at the first sheet, if you look at the general fund, if you look at the starting fund balance, so that was starting January 1, 2011, the fund balance was 226,000, and the ending fund balance was 509. So you can see that, we are definitely moving in the right direction. That doesn't mean that we have money to spend because we need that money available for our debt, but, we're definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's really great.
And one of the things that we've talked a little bit about is we're on a cash basis, not an accrual basis, and so those of you that work in business on an accrual basis, this is like you gotta switch gears a little bit and think just a little bit differently.
Yeah, this is very different.
And so that's one thing I always gotta keep reminding myself, this is cash, it's not accrual. So that's one thing. And then one of the other reasons that we need to grow these fund balances is because if you look at our debt structure, we have some painful years coming up. 2016 is an awful painful year from a debt standpoint. And so if we don't have a slug of money and a running head start at 2016, that's going to be a painfully lean year.
2015 is actually going to be really rough too. You'll see that on the next page, but it actually starts 2015. I noticed that last night when I was going through the debt schedule.
So if somebody says, if you had a question to the citizen that said, hey, last year, our ending balance, or you're projecting another $150,000 in ending balance in 2012, why don't you give that money back to the taxpayers or whatever? Well, we've got to accumulate some funds because we have some heavy debt coming up, would be one of the answers. So just, that's part of our process or our goal.
You know, and I to tack on to that, because that too makes me nervous. I have heard before, like, you know, we should have a zero balance, we're carrying over money.
Yeah, I heard that.
Hope we carry over money. And you know, that balance, it's also a little bit of a false sense in that it appears that we're growing our tax revenues. No, we're not. We got some lucky hits last year. That may never happen again.
Right.
So if we don't use that towards our debt, or keep it so we can keep ourselves safe.
Just be smart, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would, I think it's been the consensus of past councils, and I'd be interested if that consensus still holds, that when there are times where we find, I'm gonna call it windfalls, or unanticipated either additional revenue or unanticipated debt that we end up not having, that we try to not to use those things for general operating things. For example, this year, suppose that we got $10,000 for from an inheritance tax. Past council's preference was, let's not use this to pay overtime for police officers. Let's use it for debt reduction or something that has a one-time cost associated to it with no ongoing expenses. So that, you know, I use the benches as an example. There are somewhere around 120 benches in Greenhills, and you know, if Uncle Louis dies and he was a great guy, I want a bench with Uncle Louis' name on it, and I'll write a check for $150 or whatever it is for a bench. And the problem with that isn't Uncle Louis, God rest his soul, but the problem is that 5 years down the road, Uncle Louis' bench needs to be painted. In 10 years, it needs to be painted again, and people can't remember Uncle Louis' name anymore, and it still needs to be painted. So, you know, it's the idea that if we make an expenditure, we need to look at what are the ongoing costs associated with it. So these opportunities for where we have one-time revenue or increased revenue or one-time decreased expense, that we use the monies that become available from that event to either do debt reduction or do one-time expenditure. So that's, if anybody feels differently about that, speak up now. If not, I think as we work on budget and things like that, we will use that as our philosophical approach.
Right.
Couple things kind of jump out at me. In the fire contract, proposed appropriation was $17,750, and actual expenditures last year were $133,000.
Is that on page 2?
No, it's
It's
on
on the
the
second
Oh,
page.
front page, okay.
financial overview.
Okay.
No, you were looking at the right one, Greg. It's the
Okay.
second page.
Fire contract line.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure that's a correct number.
Right, I'm not sure it's either.
That's supposed to be $117,000.
I'm sorry, that's probably the temporary appropriation for the
Right.
first 3 months.
So
I'm
that's
sorry,
just
I
the
That's
picked
okay, that's okay.
I picked up the
Because
wrong.
the others seem to be the annual, so I
That's 25% of what it should be. I apologize, I picked up
Okay.
the wrong number there.
and what about golf? We got actual expenditures last year were $20,000, but we got $10,000 appropriated. On
I
golf.
That's probably right now.
Yeah, I think that's probably right, yeah.
And again, these appropriations haven't been in front of you yet. We were putting together numbers,
Yeah, this is a very rough.
and they
one.
need changes. So just,
Okay, sorry.
These are
no,
not-
No,
just
those
so
are good
you know, I
questions.
don't want you, yeah, absolutely, just, yeah, these aren't the final figures yet.
Okay.
And actually, I know I'm jumping back to my report, but I forgot that one. I'm actually There have been some folks who have called and said they're interested in helping at the golf course, so I've asked, and I put an ad in the journal for anybody interested in helping with the golf course to come, it's a meeting I'm gonna have right before the council meeting. So if anybody has any ideas, but we really don't have a firm handle on what we need to be doing there yet, which is one reason why I just plugged in 10,000 for now, but I expect that to change. And if anybody has any ideas, please come. Thank you.
When you say helping, is it like a volunteer basis or?
Well, you know, I'm sure we'll hire people, volunteers, but I'd like to know, like, does anybody have skills to teach, you know, some golf clinics? All right, you know, I'm not a golf person, so I want to hear what people think we can do to try to attract.
Increase the revenue.
Yeah, increase the revenues there.
Teach some of this,
Um,
like,
What time's that?
So,
meeting?
6
Right.
Yeah,
o'clock.
6 o'clock, yard?
6 o'clock,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Great, thank you. Yeah,
Just
6
just
o'clock.
before this next meeting,
Yes,
it was in the journal?
yes.
Will
And
be.
it'll look like this. Yeah, journal came
Will
out
be.
yesterday.
Oh, will be, okay. I was just saying, I read it.
Oh, it was in there. I got a copy of it. Anyway, so thanks for bringing that up. But yeah, not knowing what it's gonna be, that's why some of these are just holders until we've been able to look at some numbers.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an idea. It's not, like I said, these are all just projections. Okay, the next sheet, is just a summary of the voted and non-voted debt totaled. So if you look at the first column, that's just for each year, that's the total amount, and then the last column is the total amount payable all the way up until the end of the debt, so for 2012, our total non-voted and voted debt is $633,703.76. And that's where, if you go down to year 2015 in the first column there, and you look over at the total amount payable, you see that we're hitting the top right there. And 2016 is
Similar.
very similar. And then it starts to go down. So it peaks in 2015 and 2016. So when we talk about trying to build up our carryovers, you know, that's why we need to hit that debt. We need to make
2018, we're gonna spend what big. We're gonna do
Yeah.
5 years worth of CapEx.
And then if you have, the next two sheets are just a very
Can I
detailed
interrupt you
breakdown.
just for a sec? Just from a little historical perspective, in actual 2011, we were probably around the 635 range on debt, 630, 635, somewhere in there. So, you know, this year's debt isn't all that dissimilar from last year's as far as what's payable.
And then the next two sheets just support that voted and non-voted summary there. These are just more detailed breakdowns if anyone is interested in actually seeing. The first sheet is the bottom chart is the total voted debt, and then everything above it is just supporting information for that. And then the last sheet is the total non-voted debt. So those are just more supporting documents if you want to see the breakdown of exactly what makes up, you know, each total amount payable for each year.
And I think these are kind of, here's what this is for the benefit of the new folks. There's a couple of pieces of paper that I always usually have with me at council meetings. And one of them is our kind of the overview appropriations thing and the debt. Because if somebody says to me something about the swimming pool, you know, it's nice to be able to tell them, yeah, we have 4 more years worth of payments, or 5 years, whatever it is, worth of payments on the renovation. And it happened in 1996, and so that, you know, we have a, you know, you can convey with solid facts the debt that's one of the, I'm not sure that there's any hay to be made here, but one of the things that we talked about was looking to see if we can restructure any debt and gain more favorable interest rates. If you look at the debt that we have, they're all pretty, we're in an incredibly favorable interest rate,
Yeah.
time period, but, we're gonna try to talk to some people and have them take a look at it and give us an opinion.
Do we know, Kim, do we know which, if any, are there any prepayment penalties? In other words, are we locked in, or can we pay down certain things without, and would that go against the
Yeah.
principal?
My understanding is, yes, there are some that get prepayment penalties, but we have some that are callable this coming December. So that will give us an opportunity, and we're certainly not gonna be able to pay them off, but
Sure.
to refinance those.
Is
I
there
don't
a
think
way
it's gonna
to
be this
get,
first group.
like a top line, what's the status on which ones can be prepaid and when that goes up?
I have that information. I'll get that for you. And, yeah, again, our person that we work with, Von Hospital, does a nice, graph of that. And our first ones are this coming December, so probably mid-year, we'll start going through that whole process.
We gotta be a little careful that we pay down on debt too quick and we've got a big payment in out years, cause we have cash.
Well,
We
if
have
we
cash.
had, I know there's not much time left on, the retirement, not retirement, but, inheritance tax or something. If we had, it's just a matter of knowing all the facts so we can make the best decision.
Right.
But you're right, you can't do that and not be sensitive to what's coming down the road too.
What's the hit for this year for the inheritance tax?
Well, I think we were only estimating, at 30, 40?
We've averaged around 400,000.
Right, I mean, how much is going away, because we only get
Oh,
some
it
of
will
that.
totally
No,
go away.
yeah, it's going away entirely.
Totally, yeah.
We get 100% of whatever's generated this year and we get nothing from,
Next year already?
2013.
I thought it was supposed to be,
2012 is the last year.
oh my
And the
god,
inheritance tax is in place.
I thought they were taking about 3 or 4 years to kind of bring it down.
You might be thinking of the local government fund.
Yeah, they're
Sure.
facing
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that was a pretty sly deal, if you think about it.
well, yeah, and
Because
part of,
they weren't really, the state wasn't really getting much. I don't know if they were getting any of it. It was all going to local, so they get all the credit for making it go away. We're the ones taking it down.
Right, oh,
Well, anyway, we're getting off track a little bit, and you're absolutely right, and we're seeing it's more township, that's precisely what they're contending with. The state take it away, makes themselves look good. We let hold it back. All right, do we have anything else in the financial, update? Everybody
that was all I-
clear?
hey, it's so simple, thank you.
Thank you.
I run my business with a cash payment, so you're probably.
Mr. Dries?
but,
I'll make copies, so.
oh, okay. Then, why don't you send any extras back to me and I guess we can look at any extras. As you know, the process started in 2008. It seems like about 4 billion years ago, and concluded in the adoption